Hello and greetings. I have to apologize for being away for 4 days, but I've been incredibly busy. When I actually said I have 4 jobs, I actually meant that. I kind of was on the edge about deciding to call this video On the Brink. And, well, we actually are on the brink. There's some good news and bad news. Most of it's actually bad. I hate to say that. By the way, I lived in Russia for quite a long time. Used to be russo-angliysky переводчик. It's Russian-English translator. Did some stuff and lived over various parts of Russia, including Vladimir, Moscow, Leningrad, which of course now is called St. Petersburg. So I'm very familiar with the Russian people. Also, too, the Ukrainians. Been there several times, lived there for a short little period. Very, very beautiful. Definitely the most beautiful place I've ever seen. I've said before that Russia is the fly in the ointment. You know, during the past year plus, the one thing that I've seen, and it's quite astonishing, and human stupidity really, really is quite boundless, is that everybody's picking on NATO. And, you know, I don't have a dog in the fight, obviously. But NATO was actually created to offset Soviet aggression, yeah? And I don't confuse Soviet communism with the Russian people. You know, having lived there and made a lot of friends with Russian people, I've got nothing against Россия, настоящие крепкие народы. I know you don't speak Russian, but that was some nice, kind words towards the Russian people. Get along great with them. But people are forgetting that there's not one person on this earth that denies the fact that there's one country that stuck a lot of military hardware on the border, and then a lot of people told me that it would never happen. And I said, yeah, it's going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. I said, yeah, it's going to happen. And then it went across the border. There's one country that did that. I'll let you figure out who that was. Everybody, I find it really odd. It's, you know, I never underestimate human stupidity. But I'm really quite astonished that all the anti-intellectuals, I'm not going to say pseudo-intellectuals, I mean anti-intellectuals that, you know, fail to acknowledge that fact. You know, it's like, was it NATO that amassed an enormous amount of military hardware on the border and then rolled it over the border? No, that was somebody else. Kind of say that tongue-in-cheek, but it's really quite astonishing. But Russia is the fly in the ointment to what I've humorously called Hydra, and there's nothing humorous about it. The idea of breaking up Russia was first proposed by Gunther. I'm not, you know, advocating for this at all. I'm saying that's what these people want. It's kind of like the big bully in the room that has a lot of brute force military hardware. A lot of it is extremely antiquated, yet super effective. You know, a baseball bat, like a caveman bat, is extremely antiquated, but it works. So it's kind of like that. They want to break up Russia. You've got one with Gunther Feldberger, chairman of Austrian NATO, a non-governmental organization, and they're talking about it again at the UN. He's standing in front of this broken up map of Russia, split into all these ethnic divisions, 41 separate countries. They want to actually do a slice and dice of the enormous country of Russia, and it's no different than, you know, spaying and neutering the cats, the alley cats. They can't have them having any purpose. You know, they're there, but now it's harmless. You know, where once there was an enormous giant with an enormous amount of extremely large clubs, now we've got all these separate little state entities that can fight amongst each other. That's what Hydra themselves want. Nobody's talking about this. There's nobody on YouTube talking about this. There's none of these so-called military experts and genuine retired, and I've heard a lot of them, retired generals. I've watched all their shows, and they're not pointing out a lot of really blatantly obvious facts that are just undeniable. They do want to break up Russia. Here's one. President Duda, president of Poland, Duda, said, I propose to divide Russia up into 200 ethnic states. Russia is the largest colonial power in the world, and of course is holding 200 ethnic states captive. This is what they. This is what they want. This is what's being pushed. By the way, here a couple days ago, NATO warned the world that we're on the brink of WW3 and announced that it's taking some nukes out of storage in Europe to confront Russia in Ukraine. Well, you know, knowing the Russians quite well, I mean, the only person that knows more about Russia and Russians, if you're watching, is some native Russian. I mean, if you're not, I know more about Russia than you do, including, you know, these generals, which are brilliant strategists, but they're missing the point of what we're actually doing. I think a lot of people have forgotten, you know, what Russia did in taking a lot of military hardware into Laos, Burma, and Vietnam, and they had a proxy conflict with the United States. You can argue all day long that the United States shouldn't have been there, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I don't really have a side on that, but that's what happened. We broke up the Soviet Union. They made a great movie about it called Charlie Wilson's War. It's a brilliant movie about how we actually broke their back in Afghanistan by supplying a lot of hardware. And I'm about to say some words that I hope if you're Russian it doesn't get your dander up, because most of Russia is quite a miserable place, I have to admit, but you know, there's some beautiful things in Russia and I get along great with the people, and I'm not picking on Russia when I say this. But other than having some antiquated, severe brute force military hardware, which Russia does have, Russia is a very weak country. I mean, people think, well, it's huge and they have, you know, they have nukes, and all of that's true, but Russia's facing a population crisis of decline where they're just not producing any children. The people are scattered everywhere. I mean, even though the country is huge, it's not some sort of juggernaut on any front. Other than military hardware and gold and minerals and some other stuff, Russia doesn't even have the economy of the state of Texas. And why does, I guess most people don't really know much about Russia, and of course when I grew up, we were all brainwashed to fear Russia. And their military might is undeniable, but when you go there and you know, you go travel all over Russia and you learn a lot about Russia, it's nothing at all to be afraid of. I mean, Russia is not. Russia, and please don't go after me for saying this, but Russia is a weak country. I assume I'm going to get, you know, attacked from all sides. Yeah, Russia's a huge military might. Blah, blah, blah. I know the 12 nuclear enabled submarines that they recently launched, and some of them are around Cuba, some of them are off the east coast of Melbourne, Florida, and all that military might is real and undeniable, but their economy is weak. They are not a powerful country. There's two different types of people. Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly but carry a big stick. There's two different types of people. There's people that actually talk tough, and there are people that are tough. You know, the people that talk tough, when, you know, the poo hits the fan, they're not tough. And people like, and I've known more than a few Navy SEALs. I even knew one Delta Force operator. Short little guy, too, by the way, but I mean, he's tough. These people never talk tough, but when, you know, the metal, you know, the rubber meets the road, they can make it happen, but they're not sitting there bragging about it. The United States military hardware, that the stuff that we have that is not being talked about, and most of which most people don't know about, is completely unbelievable in just an awe-inspiring way. Just the technological level of what it is and what we're actually capable of. And I'm not trying to pump up the United States by saying that. I'm just saying Russia keeps talking about its military might. I don't care if you're on the left or the right, but United States presidents and the military, including four-star generals, you know, unless it really gets right on the wire, they don't brag about what we have, most of which they don't even want people to even know that we have. But some of the stuff I know about is absolutely, it just makes the very powerful military hardware of Russia just seem like Stone Age antiquarian clubs. But that's not to say a club is not effective. So are we on the brink? We absolutely are, and there's a lot of indication of this. The United States and NATO, along with, and there's a certain entity that's running the United States right now, and I'm not going to say who they are, but you probably have a good idea. We're not trying to win in Ukraine. Everybody's talking about, including four-star generals, I find incredibly stupid, myopic, and unintelligent, talking about the United States and or NATO winning in Ukraine. There's on Ukraine. Ukraine's on the brink of failing. When we actually did a proxy conflict with the Soviet Union, Bывшего Советского Союза, in Afghanistan, we didn't actually care who won. We were about crippling the economic back of the Sovietsky Soyuz, the Soviet Union, and we did it, and we did it well. The United States and NATO are not interested in winning in Ukraine. They're trying to break the backbone of Russia, the same way we busted them up in the Afghan conflict. We're following the same thing except different vectors, but the exact same thing is happening now. We're not interested. There's, of course, an enormous amount of hell on both sides that are being inflicted. I love the Ukrainian people. I love the Russian people, okay? If you think I'm taking sides on this, the side of the United States, I'm just looking at it objectively and rationally, and I'm disgusted and pissed that nobody's talking about this, including four-star generals. Some of them might know it, but they're just not saying anything. I've not heard anybody say it. We're just trying to break the back of Russia. But Russia's the fly in the ointment for a global reset. I mean, they truly are. Is the United States military hardware being used by Ukraine to launch kinetics into Russia? This is absolutely undeniable. It is the case. Of course, Russia did the same thing to us when we were in Vietnam, Laos, and Burma. Thailand, excuse me. Hello. It's a little bit before my time. I mentioned one wrong country there. Don't go after me on that one. But the same thing is happening. The other thing that people think, well, the Russian Orthodox Church. Well, I'm sorry, but I've lived in Russia, even though some people observe it. The Russian hierarchy are mostly humanists and atheists. The same could be said of our own government, but we're not talking about true believers here on either side. We're absolutely not. Not on the side of NATO and Hydra, and not on the side of the Kremlin in Moscow. That's Russian for Moscow. It's in Moscow. They're not dealing with true believers here. You have to be afraid of true believers, but in the current conflict we have, there are no true believers. I'm sorry, I don't see any of them anywhere. Those are the people you got to be afraid of, but there aren't any true believers on either of the fronts that are currently going on between Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and this NATO proxy. But we are on the brink. There's an old saying that says this, the difficulty of playing chicken is knowing when to blink or when to swerve, and you know, NATO and or the United States are going to overplay their hand, and they're going to find out that they overplayed this game of chicken a little too deeply. But all of history, and this has certainly been war-gamed by supercomputers, undeniably, 100% undeniability of that Russia has always historically backed down, you know, when the push came to shove. I mean, they have. They're self-preserving. I'm not picking on Russia when I say this either, but Russia, despite the Russian Orthodox Church, I've been in more Russian churches than all of you combined, including a lot of burned out ones that were actually burned down during the time of Stalin. Even bought some Russian iconography and brought it back, and it's very beautiful and I cherish it. But Russia is not a land of true believers. He said, well, the Russian Orthodox Church, most people are Christian. You can cite the statistics all you want, but I actually lived there. I'm sorry, but I know, unless you're a Russian yourself, I'm sorry, I know more about the country than you do. If you think that's egotistical, I don't care. I do know more about the country and the people than you do. It's not a land of true believers. They will back down, and this is what NATO and the United States is trying to overplay their hand at right now. And I'm not taking any side in stating that fact. I'm just trying to be objective. But once again, the advanced hardware that the United States has makes everything Russia has look like antique trash by comparison. I mean, it really does. That's totally being objective. Right now, we have a serious issue with the end of petrodollar. Anybody that's had their eyes peeled knew that the end of the petrodollar was coming. It's already here. Saudi Arabia has ditched it. I've told you for the past 2-3+ years that the only way to get out of everybody dropping the US dollar is introduction of CBDC or full-out conflict/reset, i.e. WW3. Hopefully a very shortened or scaled down WW3, but that's coming. I mean, we really are on the brink. That's why I hesitated and I thought over and over again about calling this video on the brink, but we truly are on the brink. I'm not interested in ever making a clickbait video. If I didn't actually have serious conviction about us truly being on the brink, I wouldn't have made this video, nor would I have actually called it being on the brink. Yeah, but they want to break Russia up, and it makes perfect sense. There's the old saying, goes all the way back to Lao Tzu, divide and conquer. They want to divide Russia up into little pieces, kind of like shuffling a deck of cards and scattering them all out there, and having them, bicker amongst each other. That's exactly what they want for Russia. They want a completely ununified bunch of ethnic states. I mean, I showed you the picture of it. That's what they want. That's what they're working for. First, you have to break their back financially. Then there's internal division, and the economy doesn't work anymore in Russia. Of course, we're right on the brink of that right now. It's not working here either. But we have a plan for that. And by we, I mean Hydra. I don't count myself as the we. I'm talking about the evil entities that are running this. Yeah, the peace conference in Switzerland, they're trying to break it up. By the way, there's a new bill that would force military men aged 18 to 25 to join the military. The House of Representatives passed a large defense bill on Friday evening that included provision to allow automatic enrollment of young men between the ages of 18 to 26 for selective service. Well, it doesn't really matter that much anymore. I mean, people say, I'm not going to fight for this stinking country. Well, that's all well and fine. But the military and the powers that be have seen this coming for decades and decades, especially since the peace movement. Where war is mostly remote control now. I mean, the amount of hardware that's been designed to be operated by a 10-year-old that knows how to play a video game is absolutely stunning. It doesn't matter if any of you will or won't fight. It's all, the really powerful stuff is all remote control. I hear they're actually trying to equip mini nuke subs that are remote controlled. They're making little tiny nuclear subs, not only powered by miniature nuclear reactors, but also too armed. And there don't have to be any human beings on it. Supposedly is either in development or it's probably already been made, to be the truth of it. By the way, did you hear about this yesterday? The 911 systems in Massachusetts. Not part of it. The entire state of Massachusetts went down. The cause of the outage is under investigation. It's kind of apropos that it would happen to me, because if it happened in Kentucky, nobody would care because everybody here has the tools to defend themselves in Kentucky. But all the people up in Massachusetts, most of which don't believe in having the right to defend yourself, which I find is just, it's, Darwinian anti-intellectualism, epic stupidity. No offense against you, Massachusetts, but most of you up there don't believe in. They just think you can call 911 for anything. Even if you could, they're never going to show up in time to save you. So I find that really, really, really ironic. It's kind of like Mother Nature slapped Massachusetts with some great irony. Yeah, NATO warned that the whole world is on the brink of WW3. Yeah, and they're going to take some nukes out of storage. Said an undisclosed number of nukes are on standby amid escalating tensions. By the way, having been all over Russia and been all over Ukraine, mostly, the Russians and the Ukrainians don't even look alike. Now, there is an intermediate zone there where they're kind of, everything melds, kind of like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but Russians and Ukrainians don't even look alike. I mean, I could, with 100% accuracy, tell them apart, Russian, Ukrainian, Russian, Ukrainian. It's very, very easy. This idea, well, a lot of you actually told me over the years, oh, yeah, Ukraine's really Russians anyway. They don't even look alike. Before the end of the year, China, i.e. before the election, China is going to invade Taiwan there. There's really just no doubt about it. By the way, the United States has dispatched the enormous Los Angeles-class nuclear subs to run defense against the Russian podvodные lodki. That's a Russian word for submarine. The Russkie podvodные lodki, the Russian submarine armaments that are parked off of, but there's these aircraft, United States aircraft, they keep flying in circles off the coast of Melbourne out in international waters. They're actually hunting for and keeping track of these Russian nuclear subs. Everybody keeps chirping at NATO, but NATO was created to offset Soviet aggression. I don't know if you knew this or not, but for much of the past 60, 70 plus years, there's a lot of countries in Eastern Europe that were completely underneath the thumb, 100% underneath the thumb of the Soyuz Советский Социалистический Республик, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. NATO was created to offset that aggression. And apparently younger generations, since they don't have an education at all and they're anti-intellectuals, they don't understand facts. So everybody keep chirping at NATO. The people that you need to be concerned about is not NATO and not Russia, rather this globalist cabal of what I call Hydra, and I'm not going to name the entities. I could name off 4 of them right now. Trilateral. I'm not going to name any of them. These are the people that, nobody in the media is talking about, but these are the entities behind the entities that are pulling the strings on the puppets. And that's not my opinion. That's a damn fact. By the way, I was recently looking at homes. I have no money. I've got like $16,000 to my name in total. Me and my family are going to sell our Florida home because we can't afford to keep it. Yeah, we're going to sell the Florida home that I bought after my wife died. For gits and shiggles. Yeah, I said that right. For gits and shiggles, pig Latin. I looked up what this house I spent $60,000 on in 2004. This house now in Lexington is worth over $250,000. I mean, for $250,000, looking in Lexington, the houses are about 70% this size and not in great neighborhoods. It's just amazing what real estate's absolutely gone to. By the way, all signs point to, and everybody agrees, anybody with a brain anyway, agrees that we're right on the brink of full-out escalation in Lebanon. Benjamin Netanyahu has actually disbanded his war council due to internal strife. Man, when that kicks off, it's just, what we're on the brink of is absolutely amazing, and not in a good way. Yeah, President of Serbia said we will have WW3 within 3 to 4 months. He said the train has left the station and no one can stop it. And I told this to people, oh, that guy's a fool, President of Serbia. No, he's not. You could think he is, I don't care, but I mean, what he said is objective and accurate. I mean, it just is. By the way, this happened last week, June the 12th, actually. Russia halted trading of the euro and the dollar. The dollar is, not only are we so deep in debt, it's mind-boggling due to them printing money left and right. Did you know something like, 80% of all dollars currently in circulation were printed in the past 4 years, was it? Something like 80% of all U.S. dollars have been printed in just the past 4 years. If I have the date wrong on that slightly, it's something really astronomically mind-blowing like that. I'm sorry I don't have that exact one right in front of me. This is exactly what they want. This is what they don't want you to see. This is what they're grinning about. This is their end goal. You see that little map? They got Russia chopped up into little bitty bits and pieces like that, yeah? This is exactly what they want. I've told you this for years. To evil Hydra, Russia's the fly in the ointment. They are. Russia is not really a threat. Russia is not powerful. They have a lot of military hardware, like I said. They got a lot of minerals and gold and silver. All of this is true, but they still don't have the economy of Texas. They don't. And that's not picking on Russia at all. I'd love to go back to Russia. It's too expensive and, a million other reasons I'd love to go back. I'd rather go take a real vacation, to be honest with you. Like the Bahamas or something like that. I wish I spent those years in the Bahamas instead of Russia. I'd be perfectly happy to be ignorant of Russia. It's like, yeah, I spent a few years in Tahiti in the Bahamas. Yeah, had a good time. Got a nice tan, walked on the beach, met some, nice chicks in two-piece bikinis. Not that they would have talked to me anyway, but They want to break up Russia. Just we have a perfect, even over the past 2 years and the nonsense and gobbledygook garbage that's been happening that they've tried to push on people, we're on a perfect storm front here I've never seen in my life. And even if you're 80 years old, you haven't seen it either. I mean, we just are. It's not my opinion. It's just we're right on the brink. I mean, tell me what you think. I read every comment, actually. And once again, I'm sorry I've been busy for the past 4 days. My friend flies in from Florida, and I'm going to take him to his farm. And I'm going to spend one night there, and I'll be back Friday for live stream. They want to break up Russia. But the good thing is there's no true believers on this front, and people that are not true believers are cowards. So that's the only good news on the front of what's happening here. Not talking about in the Middle East, I'm talking about between NATO, Russia, Eastern Europe. There's no true believers there. There's no people willing to, fall on their own sword. Ugh! They're just not. That's the one good thing of wishy-washy agnostics and atheists is that, when the rubber meets the road, they'll always stick their tail between their legs, and this is what's being counted on. But in the game of chicken, it's being cut way too close. Tell me what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in live stream tonight. Lux e veritas. And by the way, I wasn't picking on Russia in any part of this video, okay? I get along great with the Russians. I'd love to go back to Russia. I'd love to go back to Ukraine. Not right now, though, because a lot of it has been laid waste. But the interesting thing about that is that it wasn't NATO that laid it waste. It was somebody else that did that. And everybody apparently is in denial about that. It wasn't NATO that toppled the countless cities of Ukraine. No, it wasn't. I'll give you one guess. Less than one guess. Who did? It wasn't NATO that did that. Hey, it's all NATO's fault. It's all I've heard for the past year plus. NATO's not the one that, leveled the 10-story apartment complexes down to into the basement as far as the eye could see. That was not NATO that did that. And you can't argue with me about that because it's true, and it's 100% undeniable, and it's factual. Nobody points that out, which I find extremely anti-intellectual and dishonest, no less. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Oi!